This panel was part of the SGPS Scholarship Beyond Boundaries Conference, hosted at Queen's University from the 29th of February to the 1st of March 2020.
Hi everybody, I'm Siobhan. So I wanted to just sort of launch in with a narrative I've been writing about my research. So during my time in Costa Rica, I witnessed the interface of extinction. I found it at the edges of forests, a frontier where the brave and bold monkeys venture to commingle with humans in semi-urban, semi-wild areas, sharing in food, mischief, and pathogens. Sometimes monkeys mistake an uninsulated electrical wire for a liana vine and attempt to swing across it, only to be burnt. Sometimes they tumble down onto a roadway where cars are whizzing past. Sometimes monkeys are too bold and too brave. They lose their fear of humans and become vulnerable to poachers who commodify them into pets. "We are in the monkey's home," said a naturalist guide once to me. I walked with him through Manuel Antonio Park, where the monkeys there seem to me frontiersmen. They are changing with the times. We are in their home, and they are adapting to us being there. Unfortunately, the closer they get, the more precarious their position. And if they get too close, they might end up in a rescue center. These are sites of animal rehabilitation which you can visit as a tourist or a volunteer. Some monkeys arrive already a lost cause. They are too sick, too disabled, too habituated to humans. They cannot be released, so they become ambassadors for their species, living out their retirement from the wild in enclosures. As a tourist, it's a privilege to see their elusive, arboreal bodies from mere meters away. Then our tour guide tells us about the wildlife trade, the deforestation, and our wonderment is sobered. The monkeys transform before our eyes into refugees, the stateless, vulnerable charges of the rescue center, a halfway house for broken animals, a place of hope for some and hospice for others. But it's not too late for all monkeys who arrive at rescue centers. Some have a chance to reclaim their wild lives once more. Those with hope are quarantined from the hopeless, in an ironic bid to ensure that they will be safe in the wild. Then they must learn misanthropy. They cannot depend on us if they want to be wild, so when we administer medicine to them, we have to spray water into their enclosure to herd them into a shift cage before entering, and this causes them to shriek and bounce off the fencing like ping pong balls. This is the process of rewilding and decommodifying. Okay. Monkeys move out of the forest and into the city. We take them from the city and put them back into the forest. This is the cycle of monkey rehabilitation. Rescue centers are sites of tourism, but they are understudied and underregulated, though they are at the forefront of extinction. My research looks into monkey lives, welfare, and conservation at 3 centers in Costa Rica in an attempt to understand what factors are leading to monkey endangerment and how the overlapping boundaries of human and monkey populations is exacerbated by tourism. My research is optimistic, however, as I wonder whether rescue centers can, as Juno Pereñas writes in Decolonizing Extinction, quote, teach us how to share a future together amid mass annihilation. So I wanted to acknowledge my collaborators. These are the 4 monkey species indigenous to Costa Rica that I have the privilege of knowing personally, and they are more to me like people than any animal I ever thought, and of course the human collaborators as well. So these are the 3 boundaries I will discuss today: boundaries of care, identity, and place. In writing this presentation, I had been reflecting on the following statement from Donna Haraway, quote, primates existing at the boundaries of so many hopes and interests are wonderful subjects with whom to explore the permeability of walls, the reconstitution of boundaries, and the distaste for endless socially enforced dualisms. To understand how boundaries are formed, shaped, and transgressed requires examining human-monkey relations in Costa Rica, which I represent in this cycle. One of the major takeaways from my last field season was that monkeys are constantly transgressing the artificial boundaries we place them in, be it the immaterial borders of a national park or the strong mesh of an enclosure. As well, the urban development in Costa Rica has generated these borderlands. The number 1 threat to wildlife worldwide is habitat loss, which leads to reduced mobility for wild monkey populations and, as a result, inbreeding. You know the old joke, why did the monkey cross the road? Well, don't worry, I have the answer. Monkeys move through these borderlands from one forest patch to another to forage, disperse, or migrate. To do so, they must cross hazardous terrain and infrastructure such as power lines and roadways, putting themselves at risk of collisions, electrocution, poaching, and dog attacks. Monkeys are entropic. Where there are boundaries, they will break them. Any boundaries we place around them are inevitably permeable. The phenomenon of wild monkeys transgressing the boundaries of national parks to find themselves in urban areas creates a mutual risk of vulnerability, of conflict, injury, and disease. This might seem like a lose-lose situation, but in fact, the tourism industry capitalizes on the movement of monkey bodies into urban centers, commodifying the dissolution of place boundaries by creating tourism opportunities around encounters with monkeys. There are restaurants whose popularity is a result of wild capuchins coming to put on a show for the patrons by eating food that's just lying around but is quite obviously put there by the restaurant. You can also go on boat tours of mangroves where squirrel monkeys and capuchins will jump aboard for bananas, conveniently on the boat, and take selfies with people on it as well. And even though I should mention that Costa Rica has very strict no touch, no feed wildlife laws, which are pretty awesome, and these are illegal activities, it still occurs and knowingly occurs. And I've seen it firsthand. And I'd like to also signpost here that I've already more or less mentioned all the major threats to primate conservation in Costa Rica, but I wanted to throw some numbers on them. So this is data I collected from my last field season that covers 365 records of monkey intake forms from 4 rescue centers around the country. As you can see, the biggest threat to monkeys has been electrocution, which is quite shocking because I'm told that 98% of their electrical lines are uninsulated, which is, for a country that's almost a third natural areas, is quite intense. Nearly all of these categories are directly or indirectly a result of habitat loss, and they also bleed into each other because you have a lot of cases where monkeys were found injured, sick, or traumatized, or some unknown reason, just the person who took the monkey in didn't know what had happened. So it could be that these numbers of electrocution and collisions with cars or former pets are actually bigger than they seem right now. So we've already discussed boundaries of place and the dissolution of the urban-wild binary in favor of the semi-wild, which gives rise to semi-wild monkeys. I have some screen grabs here from a video I took of a mother capuchin and a baby on her back parting a crowd. This is in Manuel Antonio, which is the most visited national park in the country. It has millions of visitors every year, and it is also home to notoriously habituated capuchins who steal your bug spray to apply on themselves and also eat your sunscreen and beach snacks. So yes, they will go through your luggage. And actually, when this mother was with the baby crossing this pathway, which shows that they're habituated because a mother with a child is one of the most territorial animals you can get. The male and other capuchin monkeys were going through people's belongings. So there is an unsubstantiated but anecdotal theory that capuchin monkeys distract tourists with their babies to ransack your luggage. Yeah, exactly, a distraction technique. We've also touched on identity as the tame-wild boundary transforms from exclusionary, which reinforces who, monkey or human, belongs where, into enabling, as the tourism and hospitality industry monetize this boundary crossing as a capitalist opportunity. I want to highlight here the case of Dennis the Menace, and so called because he is a wild male capuchin who hangs around a rescue center I visited almost daily. I am told he's basically adopted the captive troupe, who are all females, which leads to many Don Lothario jokes. And I've watched him perform a very scary coalitionary threat face to other wild monkeys passing through his territory, which you can see in the top photo. And I've also seen him receive attentive grooming from the ladies, as shown in the bottom photo. And these ladies also share their food with him that's given to them by the keepers and will fight with each other for his attention and the right to groom him through the fencing the entire time. This leads me into the boundaries of care, since the phenomenon of Dennis the Menace is a case in which we see monkeys transgressing the physical bounding of an enclosure to perform conspecific care work. Human staff also perform care work to rehabilitate these individuals in a way which restores their wild agency. If they cannot demonstrate this ability, if monkeys can't prove their wild agency, then they cannot be released. And this is often the case for those that were former pets. They are essentially, once they're rescued from a domestic situation, they are essentially never releasable. Now, the fencing of an enclosure is by nature permeable, and this can lead to safety concerns. I speak from experience, having been scratched, pulled, and my glasses stolen by grabbing little monkey arms. Juno Pereñas writes that rehabilitation work requires embracing of our mutual vulnerabilities. Monkeys may be our charges in this scenario, but they can actually hurt us and we can hurt them. And this hurt can come emotionally or physically. The boundary of an enclosure then is both a signifier of our mutual safety and vulnerability. When you stay attuned to the astonishing amount of emotion and affect involved in rehabilitation work, you start to see the breakdown of social barriers between species and also between human and non-human. We see in the bottom photo where an orphan spider and howler monkey have formed a bond and perform affiliative behavior like grooming and embracing despite being entirely different types of monkeys. You also see it in the top photo where I'm holding a orphaned baby howler monkey who I had just given milk, and now he's very milk drunk, if you judge by his little squint, just like a human child. It's extraordinary. And raising orphan monkeys is, in nearly every respect, as frustrating, draining, and rewarding as raising a human baby. We are all primates, after all. The human monkey mamas, as I call them, since they are pretty much all women, are dedicated in Costa Rica to raising monkeys to a release age. Those that I've interviewed have told me that they cry over the successful releases as much as over the failures. Every one of their monkey charges leaves an indelible mark on these caregivers. In a way, sanctuaries and rescue centers are a mirror onto ourselves, in that they force us to grapple with the reality of how our actions and inactions have gravely influenced the lives and agencies of wild non-humans. It is a site in which we must come face to face with morbidity, where the threat of extinction hangs overhead. These are places of mourning, a hospice for rehabilitant monkeys who usually arrive already on death row, and a place where resident monkeys, scrubbed of their monkeyness, exist in a place between wild and tamed. These are also places of hope. Monkeys are sentient beings who participate in forms of labor which, though distinct, bleed into each other, all underlaid by the emotional work of care that occurs at the human monkey.